All right, today I got Matt Granahan, wrestler, MMA fighter, collegiate wrestler, and professional wrestler. What's doing, Matt? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. You were having fun down in Florida, right?
Yeah, no, it was a really great time, and yeah, I have, I still am in, I'm still like getting over the fact that I was able to do that, and I'm still grateful that you were able to do that for me. So, for people that don't know, I met Matt through Larry Mazza, and Matt was able to get me onto John Elite's Elite, right? Yeah, John Elite's a podcast with Michael Dowd to basically just help me out, and it was greatly appreciated. And of course, it's like the weather's beautiful down there, and the food is great, and the women are beautiful. And then I come back to Jersey where I'm freezing my balls off,
Yeah.
and me and Matt got a chance to hang out a little bit.
Everybody's leaving the tri-state.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody's leaving. I tell all my friends that are still up there, when are you going to come down? And mostly it's their wives' jobs. If their wives are teachers, they can make more up there, and different
Right.
different scenarios. But I left the Northeast in almost 18. It's going to be 18 years coming up here.
Oh, okay.
18 years ago, and it was the best decision I ever made. I lived in New York. I lived in Somers, New York, and I grew up uh, right on Long Island Sound, 40 miles from Manhattan, Norwalk, Connecticut, and I lived in New York and Connecticut up until I've decided to finally make the move. And I was telling you, where I was asking you about Jersey because my daughter lived up there for a while. I used to come up there when she was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So mom lived in Norwood, New Jersey, and I have a good buddy that had an MMA gym. I used to do coaching clinics out with Eric Paulson, was John Potenza in
Mm-hmm.
Englishtown, New Jersey. But I mean, man, it's like I would never want to go back.
I don't
You know,
blame you, dude. Just the
uh,
shit. Like it's May and I'm still wearing sweatshirts. It's still 45, 50 degrees in the morning.
yeah,
It's like, it's May. When is it going to warm up? And then you get a couple of months where it's really nice and hot, and then it goes right back to being cold again.
yeah.
Anyway,
April of last year, John, I ran a campaign for an old buddy of mine who was a lawyer. He was running for councilman in New York City,
mhm.
and I did his speech writing and I ran his campaign for a while, and we had a falling out. But he had me up there, and as soon as I got off, it was more than it was April, and I was at my yacht club. I had a boat on Johns Island, South Carolina, really nice yacht club, saltwater pool. I was hanging out with my friends, and then one of my buddies had to drive me to the airport to go to New York. Man, we were grilling steaks and having some cocktails at the pool. It was like early April, and then driving me to the airport. It was like four. I had a night flight leaving at like 4 o'clock, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to go up there.
It's fucking horrible. I know.
Awful. I'll tell you, man. I cut that trip short. I went up there and did a few things I had to do and got out of there.
I don't
Um,
blame you.
but but yeah, you ever think about moving down to
Yeah,
South Carolina or Florida?
I would love to. My job ties me to New York City because I'm a sewer worker in New York City. So unfortunately, until that ends, I really can't do any significant moving.
But that's a good gig. You probably get a good pension down the road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great gig actually. It's pension, 401k, 457, full benefits for the rest of your life, for the rest of your wife's life. I mean, it's a great pay. The job's all disgusting, but anyway, let's talk about you. First of all, I like your shirt. That's a really nice shirt you got on.
Yeah, I'll make it dance for you, baby.
That's
I just wore this to the gym,
yeah,
and
good.
this was the shirt that you gave me. I was just to let people know, it was Berman Law Group, who was just a fantastic firm that I worked for, the law firm that I worked for down here in Florida. Uh, did you get an opportunity? You were at our podcast studio at our media center. Did you ever get an opportunity to go over to our huge gym, exclusive training center, and the mock courthouse and all that?
No, not at all. No, I was just at the studio.
Yeah, I wanted to take you, but what happened was it was a tight day for time.
Yeah.
And I was there with Dan Severn, folks who know UFC Hall of Famer, good buddy of mine. I had him on recording when you got there, and he and I had a seminar to do, actually with Larry Mazza and Dave DeKilo, which went really well on Cocoa Beach, Treasure Island, right by Cocoa Beach. So we got started kind of late, and the podcast ran a little long, and we had to leave. But I intended to give you the full tour, man. I didn't know if Evan was able to give you a tour. It looked like you were hanging out with Johnny A and Mike Dowd after that, huh?
Well, after that, we were all hungry, so we all decided to go out to eat. And I have a friend that moved down from Staten Island. He moved to God, I forgot the name of where like he's 10 minutes from there. And so we talked, and I said, when I come down there, we'll hang out, because I haven't seen him, since for a few years. She goes, "Oh yeah, definitely." So he met us, and we just all went out to eat afterwards and had a couple of drinks, and we're hanging out.
Yeah, that's great, man. I want to thank you for that. I'll show you what's left. You gave me a nice bottle of Johnny Walker Black. That's all that's left. That's it. Over Mother's Day weekend. It was great.
Good, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it, dude. Good.
Yeah, it was awesome. So,
yeah, those are all things I try to do. Like I try to, let people know that I'm really grateful for all the help. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm like, all the people that helped me, that have legitimately helped me, or either can kill you with both hands, and there's nothing you can do about it, like yourself, or they're federally convicted criminals.
Yeah. Or both.
Yeah, right. It's unbelievable. Like I interviewed this biker guy. He's a 1% biker. He was in and out of jail, and so on and so forth. And he was a really good dude. And when I interviewed him, there was another biker guy who has a bigger podcast. So I wanted to reach out to him and have him on. But just like I do, Larry or anybody who's been on first, I pass it by them first if they're in the same circles and see if it's cool, if I'm stepping on anybody's toes or whatever. So I didn't hear from him. The next day, he texts me the guy's phone number. He goes, "Here, I told him you were calling." And it's like but with the regular people, the regular guys, like I got family members that aren't even subscribed to my channel yet. I've been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah. What got you started in wanting to do a podcast?
Well, it was two people, Dave Palumbo and Fawad Abiad, and I would always watch their podcasts. And it was the lockdown, and I kind of always wanted to do it. Those two guys inspired me, and they're really informative stuff. And then one day I just went out, fuck it. I went on Amazon, I ordered all the equipment, and I just started it. I went out, fuck it. And that was really
I used to have a podcast.
Well, you still do, really.
Well, yeah, the TBT is the Berman brand. That's I want to, kind of make it clear that I host it, and my co-host is Brittany Garcia. She wasn't there that day. But it's part of the Berman team brand, and they're very big in branding. Those guys are fantastic. They just did the party with Brooke Burke, the model from E Network that was on the cover of our magazine. I'm part of that group, and they do great. I mean, they compensate me well to do that show. But I used to have a podcast of my own years ago, and it wasn't really my own either. That one. Because it was a funny story. It was a guy named Brian Snow, who was used to call the Cubs games, the Chicago Cubs games, and he had a radio show, and he.
I can't hear you. Oh, what happened? There you go. I got you now.
Trying to get more MMA guys on, so he got Kamal Shalarus. He booked through me, who was one of the fighters I was managing after Kamal had just fought Khabib, which any MMA fans, if you got to watch that fight, it was Khabib's toughest fight. I mean, Kamal, that was a back and forth battle. of a fight. And people consider Khabib, rightfully so, I think the best pound for pound fighter of all time. Well, Kamal was a longtime training partner of mine. He was my roommate years ago when I was living in Austin when we were training together, and a great fighter. But anyway, Kamal was also had a sense of humor, and he was a prankster, and he's from Iran. So when we were on this guy Brian Snow's show, he came up with a prank, and I hung on the line, and this guy had a popular. This was like a regular terrestrial radio show, and so I started coming on there all of a sudden, speaking in a southern accent. I said, "I hear you, Kamal Shalaroos," and I started. We started going back and forth, and Brian was like, "What the hell?" I don't have any lines open for callers, and he didn't even know it was me. He was. But instead of being upset about it, he got a kick out of the prank. And then he asked me if I wanted to do a podcast with him because he was getting branching out from terrestrial radio. A lot of the radio hosts are.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
They like the longer form. And so he knew that I could tell a lot of stories and have a lot of great fighters on that people know. And we could tell funny stories. And we did that show. We did that show for like 2 years. And that was where my whole I saw you had the arm wrestler on, Jonathan Laba. That was where my whole feud with Devin Laratt came from. I was good friends with Gary Goodrich, who was not only
also an arm wrestler,
but also arm wrestling champion. And on Hannibal, when Hannibal interviewed Devin, he had said some disparaging things about Gary. So that's when I called Devin out, and we had the whole thing back and forth. And I found out Devin Laratt was a really cool guy, and he set me up with that whole feud with Jonathan Laba. And I hadn't heard anything from Jonathan Laba because that event got canceled because of Corona. And then I see him on your show.
Yeah.
After I was on your show with Larry, which was kind of funny. But it's interesting because I would have loved to do this with video. Back when I did my podcast, I didn't do any of the technical stuff. All I did was call Brian on the phone, and then he put together like a kick-ass intro for us. It had a lot of my promo clips and stuff, and he ran it himself. And I was never very good with the technical aspect, but it's getting easier to do. And now with these phones, as they are, I find that it's easier to do that kind of stuff. But back when I did that show, there was no mob genre. Like we talked about, met you through Larry Mazza. Mm-hmm. There was no mob genre back then. Nobody was talking. And I don't think that so many people should be now. Yeah. But I had Tony Knapp on, who was someone I was very close to. His father, Jimmy, was a couple of the Genovese family. And Tony was friends with a relative of mine who was from that life. And Tony was like 90 when I had him on. Wow. He died like a year later. He had stories about Frank Sinatra, about his dad with Capone. He had so many great stories. And, that was when they had a lot of power in Vegas. And Tony Knapp was involved with running the casinos out there and skimming money through the casinos. He was just a great guy, Tony Knapp, and he passed away. And then this guy contacts me this morning, and he's got a podcast, and he says, "I want you to come on and talk with Anthony Raimondi, who did Vlad."
Yes.
Because
God. Yeah.
Because he said you did a video about his inaccuracies with talking about Tony Knapp, because he was talking about when Tony Knapp died, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. But I told him, and I said to you when we were there, I think it's getting oversaturated. This mob genre. It used to be like when I did it, nobody was doing that. Yeah. And now it's like these guys are crawling out of the sewers,
I watched did you watch the interview with Anthony Raimondi, whatever his name is, on Vlad TV?
That this guy Chip sent me. Chip Williamson sent me a clip where he was talking about me, and he was very, very nice about me. He said, I see the king there saying that I got it wrong about Tony. He says, I since talked to Tony's brother, and he says, I was wrong, and he apologized to me. So I said, no, I don't know the guy. So I said, that's fine. If he wants to come on with me, I let people do their thing, man. I think he's, I don't really care about that. But I think that it's weird though, man. This genre, it's gotten crazy to where it's supposed to be the code of silence, and now all these guys are wanting to talk about everything.
Well, they're striking while the iron's hot. Guys like Larry and Jon, they're smarter than the average guy that's out there. Larry is going to be fine. Larry knows how to run businesses. He's a smart guy. He's always going to be able to make money. And the thing with Larry is when you talk to him, you know that he's factually accurate. You could check.
Yeah.
When I saw the interview with Anthony Raimondi, whatever his name is, I'm watching it and I'm going, and again, I don't want to be, I'll just say it. The guy's full of shit.
He's theatrical, right? Yeah, I think but I think he's like a comic character. I can't tell if he's serious or if he's a comic character.
I think my opinion is was that typical Brooklyn guy that was around people and wanted to be that way and made up crazy stories. When he started talking about his tattoos of how he killed 300 people in Vietnam and his other tattoo about how he killed 300 people in Vietnam. And I'm like, he never did any time in jail. And yeah, I know he's the only gangster that never did any time in jail. It's just, and I'm watching.
What's crazy, John? A lot of these guys, and there's a fighter that Dan Severn fought that Dan just had on his podcast with Don Fry. And he was a guy that started fighting really late. I won't say his name and throw it under the bus, but he's a guy that made up all this shit about being like a special forces killer in Vietnam. And then they found out that, first of all, these guys, they over exaggerate all this stuff, and it's so easy to disprove.
Right.
But I don't know. That guy seems to me like he's kind of a comical character. But I want to backtrack because I want to defend my good friend Larry, because people don't realize, Larry, he testified against corrupt FBI agents. And there were corrupt FBI agents involved, in his case. And in Johnny A's case, he went down to Brazil. He was trying to do everything he could to get away, from testifying.
You could tell by when you watch my videos, and even my brothers said this, when you watch my interview with Larry, you could tell Larry's not your average thug. He's not. He's intellectually superior. He's smarter than the average street thug. He knows how to make money. He knows how to make money. He has certain values and morals that he took from the street that he incorporates into business, which I think is great. And Jon was the same way when we went out to dinner. I didn't have to, Jon didn't take $1. I mean, nobody's charging him, but he wasn't like, he was like, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. That says something about a man's character, a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, Matt, let's get into you, because you have a great past as well. So you were a collegiate wrestler, right?
Yep. I wrestled through high school and college. I actually started in college at Hofstra, which is there in the city in New York, for my first couple of years. And then I wrestled and I went to Fairfield U because I want to go to a bigger university. And I actually did 2 Division I sports, because I did wrestling. And then I went to Fairfield U. I did freestyle wrestling competitively with the club team in the spring. And then I swam, and which was wild, because I walked on. Yeah, I swam and they were at a D1 school, because I had done water polo and lifeguard, and I swam when I was younger. I could only do 50 freestyle, competitively, but I swam competitively D1. So I did two D1 sports in different years.
Okay. So you were a natural athlete, basically.
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wrestling and grappling was what I started when I was like really young, 7th grade.
Right.
And then I got into judo in college, really was between senior year in high school and freshman year in college that I started competing in judo. And that was when judo was a lot of wrestlers, because we could do leg attacks, could put your hand on the legs from the standing, and they took that away just before Rousey's time. They took that away in late 2000s, I think 2005 or 2006, because wrestlers were so dominant. But when I was doing judo, what wrestlers were dominating, and that was where I started to learn submissions. And then I did no holds barred fighting back in that time in the 90s. And then I competed in grappling, and then I started competing in MMA when I was in my 30s. And I was on a long severance. But, the one thing that I wanted to say is, the main industry I've been in for my whole adult life has been the alcoholic beverage industry. I just got into the legal profession in the last couple of years. I ran a distributor in South Carolina that was run out of New York City and Raleigh, that Armenian-run company, Edgar Vardanian, and I made that company profitable. And then before that, I was a regional manager for Magic Hat Brewing Company, Independent Brewers United. And then before that, I was a sales manager and sales rep right out of college for Northeast Beverage in Connecticut and Rhode Island, back home. So I've always had a job, always had a profession, because these sports don't have pensions.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling and MMA don't have pensions. And I saw back then, and I see even more now, so many guys that were high level fighters that are broke.
Yeah, it happens a lot. ESPN did a whole documentary on it. I think it was actually called Broke. The big ring you have on, what does that signify? Because I know that was some kind of an award that you got.
Yeah, this is Florida. In 2017, I was inducted into Florida's MMA Hall of Fame at RFC 39 that I hosted with King Mo, which was actually a surprise. I had competed here in Florida, and I was undefeated here in Florida, except for one loss that I had for disqualification against a really good BJJ guy, Jeff Hammond. That was for knee to the head, because you can't knee to the head when they have one knee on the ground, knee to head of grounded opponent. So that was my only loss here in Florida. And I also broadcasted. I had a long broadcasting career. I broadcasted in Florida for Gladiator and for RFC. I've had the pleasure of broadcasting with folks like Merciless Ray Mercer, the legendary boxer.
That's great.
Yep, I did Waco kickboxing with him, with Stephan Bonner, UFC Hall of Famer Stephan Bonner, and I did shows together. King Mo, everybody knows from Bellator, top contender that beat Quentin Rampage Jackson recently. He and I hosted some grappling tournaments together that we called the Action for. And also Frankie Edgar and I called fights up at Eagle Bank Arena for Strikeoff Fighting Championships. I actually got into the broadcasting side originally from Rob McCraw, who was a teammate of mine, and he was the matchmaker for Strikeoff. And he said, you got such a big mouth, we got to put you in the broadcast booth when they got their TV deal with Comcast, and they were doing shows in Virginia and Maryland. And that's when I started calling fights, and I love it. I'd love to get back to calling fights again.
Yeah. And I don't think there's many guys who do MMA broadcasting. I don't think,
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of, like Stephan Bonner did it for a promotion in Vegas that I was going to come on to, Millionaire Fight Club. I hosted their grappling tournaments down here, their women's grappling festivals down here. But we were supposed to do a big show, but that got stopped by Corona, by COVID. But I always loved the broadcasting. I got to work with the NBC Sports crew. I got to work with some really, really great professionals in broadcasting, and I can do play-by-play or color, in MMA. But I cornered, dozens of fights too, and trained a lot of fighters over the years as well. When I started competing, I started competing down here in Florida, and I had 5 pro fights because Florida only had pro back then. And I was 4-1. I had a fight in Alabama, 1 in Georgia. The other 3 were here in Florida. So I didn't have a lot of fights, and there's a reason for that. I was just talking to Bob Carson about this, who's a longtime fighter. He just did a kickboxing fight over the weekend, and he's fought under 2 names in MMA. He He got his license suspended under his real name, and then he came up Bob Carson so he could keep fighting. A lot of these guys just want to keep fighting and fighting. But, it's the brain damage is a real thing. The CTE is a real thing. It's amazing to see a guy like Dan Severn, who I was just with you. He's got the third most fights, the two most fights of anyone living, and the top three of anyone ever, because one of the guys passed away that had a lot of fights. And Dan's the only guy that's got over 100 wins in MMA.
Wow,
now, to
really?
put that into perspective, most guys only fight 3 times a year, 4 times a year tops.
Right.
Dan fought. He started in the UFC tournaments.
Yeah, I remember that. Those were brutal.
Yeah, but then he kept going. He kept fighting and fighting and fighting. Watch when he fought Forrest Griffin. I mean, it was like a prison rape. He held Forrest down at will, and Dan had to be in his 50s at that point because he started so late. So in my career as a competitor, I always stress this when I do coaching clinics, is if I bring wrestlers in, and most of the guys that I brought in, and I train in MMA and corner were from a wrestling background, is to teach you how to control the fight, to dirty wrestle on your feet, and to get your opponent down and to take the least amount of punishment. And it looks boring to the fans. I mean, it doesn't look exciting at all to the fans, but that's the way you're going to win your fight, and you're not going to get brain. I mean, one fight can destroy your brain. Yeah.
And have a long career, obviously, which is what they all want, and it makes complete sense. Absolutely. Yeah. Listen, the audience is one thing. It's great to have one of those be one of those fighters that is exciting, but you're doing it at the expense of your health, your mental health, and shortening your life. A lot of the general audience doesn't understand how dangerous fighting really is. They don't get it. But my favorite part of your career is when you do professional wrestling, because
I love it.
That is fantastic. We were talking, and you had so many great stories about so many pro wrestlers back in the 80s and 90s and whatnot. How did you wind up making the transition and going into professional wrestling, which you still do, by the way, from time to time, right?
Yeah, my new thing, and I should tell you, you're actually talking to Pedro Santana. Yo soy el hermano de Tito. Mi hija está muy linda. El mejor luchador en toda de lucha libre, Jenny Santana. My new gimmick is as Pedro Santana, the brother of Tito Santana.
Are you really? That's fucking great.
Yeah, so Jenny Santana, that's Tito's daughter, is world champion in no-gi in jiu-jitsu. She's a phenomenal grappler and beautiful girl and beautiful woman, I should say. She has a gorgeous daughter, Jordan, and I just had them on the show in studio. And so I told them, I said, if Tito doesn't want to work with you, because they kind of had been estranged a bit off and on from Tito, as a lot, folks, parents and children are. Nothing on Jenny's part. She's a wonderful, beautiful, wonderful woman. But I said, look, if Tito doesn't want to work with you, I said, you need to call Pedro. And she said, what do you mean? I said, you don't remember me? You don't remember me?
You just pitched it a gimmick right there.
Yeah, I say, you don't remember me? El hermano de Tito, Tito's brother, Pedro.
And what did she say when you said that?
So yeah, she loves it. She wants Jordan to get trained up more, and then we're going to be doing a show in Orlando. And my concept with Pedro is to kind of be that creepy, handsy uncle.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is great. Now, what were some of your old gimmicks, and where did you wrestle?
So my original gimmick was a Sheik gimmick. Now I started pro wrestling in late 90s with my buddy Dave, who was wrestled at Rutgers. He was at judo with me. He was a stud, and he wanted an opponent. And so he used to drag me around in the late 90s as his opponent. And that was okay. but I didn't really have a lot of color. I didn't really have a gimmick. I was basically just like the guy that he beat, that gave him a competitive match. That was a jobber, but it was a competitive match, but it was basically, we did similar matches and a lot of hard wrestling in the matches. He was a great wrestler. He was a beast, but he just wanted somebody that he could beat, that could follow him in the wrestling, aspect of it. So we did that. And then after 9/11, I came up with Hussein Hassan Vasiri, the illegitimate son of the Iron Sheik. And that was back when I had black hair, and I had my big mustache. And I used to get my heat doing that gimmick. Before I got in the building, I had this smoking hot America bar, smoking hot Egyptian girl who was a bartender at Hooters. And I had her come to the arena with me and had a chauffeur who was this little Indian dude. And I would come with my gold robe that I got from Frankie Kane, the Great Mephisto, with the camels on it. And I would have the gold robe on and just a shirt unbuttoned with gold chains. And I would have her wear a gold bikini. She's so smoking. And just like a little fur, not full fur coat, but a little fur thrall. You wanted them to be able to see her ass. She had a beautiful ass and a little string bikini and high heels. And I'd have her walk to the arena with me, not just to the ring with me, but to the arena with me. So I would purposely pass the fans and I would smack the chauffeur in the back of the head and yell at him like in fake Farsi, because Kamal Shalroos gave me a lot of Farsi language. And I would have her just look disgusted, just shaking her head, looking up and down at the girls and just shaking her head, like looking down on them so much. And I always loved to be hated.
I was going to say, you always played the villain. You would always be the heel.
Yeah. And then I came up with King of Connecticut, which was the Yankee Elvis, very haughty, blue blood, the King of Connecticut, where I looked down on the Southern fans. And I had a match with right after the rebel flag came down in South Carolina. And that was when they had the KKK and the Black Panthers both at the State House, and they were having the fights and the riots. That night, I was in a country town called Ballin Springs, South Carolina, and I came out with the rebel flag, and I told the people how Governor Haley had arrived at my estate earlier in the afternoon. And she got down on her knees, as she always does when she visits the king at his estate. But instead of performing her normal duties, she surrendered the flag to me. And I said, not since the war of northern aggression has the state of Connecticut had such power and influence over you South Kakalakians.
That's fucking great.
Oh, great. And then I ragged all the opponent, which made it even worse. And I had, I love to when they want to throw beer cans at me, that was a real redneck crowd. But the funny thing is nobody seems to want to get the heat anymore.
Nah, we were talking about that. Yeah.
I love to be hated,
Yeah, it's the real heat, the real heel, the real villain in wrestling seems to be a dying thing. Nobody
Who
wants.
Who were your favorite wrestlers, John? Who were your favorite wrestlers growing up?
Well, obviously, my favorite, just like everybody else, was Hulk Hogan. I mean, everybody loved Hogan. But besides, in the 80s, it was the Reagan era, so it was always Hogan, and then the Sheik. I hated the Iron Sheik. I absolutely hated the Iron Sheik. But my favorite bad guys, my two favorite bad guys were Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Those are my two favorite bad guys. Yeah. But my favorite good guys were, of course, Hogan. Who else were my favorite good guys back then? The British Bulldogs. I used to love the British Bulldogs.
Johnny A did some business with the Hulkster.
Did he really?
The bar business. Yeah, he had cowboys in Tampa. The Hulkster's an Italiano. He's Terry Bollea, Terry Gene
really?
Bollea.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And he did some business. You should ask John about he calls him Terry. You should ask John about Terry, the Hulkster. They did some work together too over the years. when Jon, because Jon used to have Cowboys and a few other clubs in Tampa, and Jon and his partner went into business with a couple clubs with the Hulkster.
Really?
Back in the old days, brother.
Wow. Yeah.
That was way back. That was back in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what promotions did you wrestle for?
Well, I wrestled for mostly all indie promotions. APW is my favorite in South Carolina. Southern Championship Wrestling, Bluegrass Championship Wrestling, which was Jim Cornette's old promotion, actually. Jim Cornette was my manager there when I wrestled my MMA rival, Adam Newsom, down there. And I brought a foreign object for the fans at Christmas time. And it was to help save the youth, something they'd never seen before, the toothbrush. And then I told a story to Jenny. I wrestled for FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, with a guy who was a good shooter. Tommy Taylor was his ring name, from England. And, of course, Nikki Bella. But that was back when she was Nicole Kalachi, and she was really green. And we were down there one day with Dirty White Boy, came over to me, and he said, you need to do that Sheik deal to get this girl out of her shell, where we have her in the ring and you mock her and tell her to kiss your foot.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I did that was way back in the day. I love Nicole. I love both of them. Bree's actually married to my good buddy Brian Danielson, who's roommates with Neil Melanson, great grappler that used to run Extreme Couture. We were talking to, he's a good friend of they're both good friends of Jenny too. Jenny Santana, that was just on. But I remember that calling her in the ring, and I had my Sheik robe on with the camels. And I said, young lady, today is the greatest day of all of your life, because today you get an opportunity to be with the most handsome man in all of the Middle East. So get down on your knees, pucker up, and kiss my beautiful Iranian foot. And I stuck my foot, in her face, and then she had to haul off and slap me and then take the mic.
Oh,
and
that's
she
great,
me
man.
so hard that she blew my eardrum out. I started to help her to open up a little bit, because she was smoking hot.
Yeah.
And a good athlete, but she was she was very kind of like that resting bitch face. She kind of looked like she was kind of snotty, and a lot of the girls didn't like her. But then she opened up, and look what she became. She became one of the top superstars of all time, and I always really liked her. They used to say, because that was back when I had black hair, they used to say I look like their big brother back in the day. The hair wasn't always gray like this.
It's white.
I'm an old timer now.
So what are some of the big names you've been in professional wrestling with? Anybody that we would know?
Yeah, I've done the match I want everybody to watch. It's a great match. It was a match I had with UFC Hall of Famer, the man that put the UFC on the map, the American Psycho, Stephan Bonnar. We brought wrestling back to the Attitude Era in 2019. And we had a mixed tag match with the beautiful ladies of Foil Wrestling. And it was it's on Hannibal TV, which is where people who go to watch all my stuff. And that match was a lot of fun. And if you type in UFC Bonnar Intergender, and I did TJ Jaworski, who's considered the greatest wrestler ever from UNC, the Tar Heels. He actually, good friends with Ric Flair, but amateur wrestling fans will know TJ, but he's a little guy. I did his first and only pro wrestling match where I wrestled him, and that's online, and he loved it because I could keep up with him in the amateur stuff, and he needed somebody to follow. To follow him. And I've wrestled UFC Hall of Famer Dan the Beast Severn a couple times, who you saw, who had a great run in WWE, who you just met. All the shooters, I've wrestled a lot of the the top shooters. I was supposed to have a match, supposed to have a pro wrestling match before Corona, just before Corona with Chuck Liddell. Because
Wow,
Chuck
really?
Liddell was getting into pro wrestling. And that was one that I was supposed to be doing out in Cali, where I did my book, Rough and Tumble, with Eric Paulson. You know, he trained out there, Eric, and I was supposed to do a match against him, and I was really upset that one didn't happen. You know, because I think we could have had a great match. And he did some pro wrestling after that, did a little bit after that, but.
Well, I'm going to make sure that Stephen Bonner intergender match is the link is in the description.
That's a great
area.
one, the Stephen Bonner intergender. And at Southern Championship Wrestling, I've done tag matches with the Barbarian and the Warlord and Bobby Eaton, Ricky Morton, the Rock and Roll Express. I was in a tag match with Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh, really?
Born before he died. I was in a tag match with Jim the Anvil Neidhart, you know, years ago. And you want to talk about another real hottie, that Jenny Neidhart. Check her out on Instagram. Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter. She's about to get into pro wrestling, and she is a smoke show.
Really?
Oh yeah, everybody should check her out.
Don't you? Didn't you have an angle recently with I don't remember the wrestler's
Nature
name.
Boy Ric Flair?
Well, we'll get to the Nature Boy, but the one I was thinking of is the vampire, the vampire character. What's his name? Oh, God.
The Imperial?
Yeah. Didn't you have an angle? Or am I thinking about somebody else? Or am I mistaken?
No, not the Imperial. I had not really a feud, but a real popular commentary on Jim Cornette on when he managed me and Bluegrass, and then I had the Shoot feud, which I wish him nothing but the best, But Ric Flair holds me responsible for ending his last marriage, and stealing Wendy, and there is some truth to that. You know, I'm not going to tell every sort of detail. I am a gentleman. I'm not going to tell every sort of detail, but I will say this, Rick. She's 2 cup sizes too small, and she's 40 years too old for this king.
Oh,
but
shit.
that feud was a straight shoot with Rick, and actually found out the day I saw you. It was the day before that I found out from Kevin Sullivan.
That's what I'm thinking of, Kevin Sullivan. I'm sorry.
No, I joined his Army of Darkness at a pro wrestling show.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that's the guy I was thinking of.
I did a run in and joined his Army of Darkness, but Rick and Kevin were long time. And people know Kevin in the ring as a wrestler with the Taskmaster, but they don't realize he's also the booker. He was also the man in charge backstage, and made a fortune.
WCW, right?
He owned the first 8 condos on Daytona Beach.
Really?
Back in the 70s. Yeah. For me, when he was wrestling in Florida with Eddie Graham, there was a lot of money to be made down here in Florida in pro wrestling back in the day. But the thing is, with him, he and Andrew Anderson told me, Kevin Sullivan and Andrew Anderson told me that Ric Flair called them screaming, exploding about having me on his show. Ric Flair wanted me dead.
Really?
Ric Flair threatened me. And I say again, I wish you nothing but the best, Rick. You know, nothing but the best. Oh yeah, you got, if you haven't followed that feud, man, you got to follow all his texts that Hannibal blocked out. He threatened me because he blamed me for stealing Wendy. You know, it was all because, you know, I sent him some videos of a beautiful Dominican woman. I sent him some videos of my beautiful Venezuelan. It got him in hot water with the wifey, and then I reached out to the wifey after they split, and they had announced that they split, and she and I were hanging out a little bit. She wanted me to take her for mimosas, and she just wanted to get pictures to get Rick jealous, was all it was, and text to get. And then she sent it to Rick, and then it was Rick wanted me dead. You know, blame me for ending his marriage. And I say, you're Ric Flair. Come on, you're Ric Flair. Get out there, style and profile. She was already gone. She'd already left the nest, Rick. You can't fault the woman for having good taste, Rick.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of guys don't realize that when a woman files for divorce, she's already checked out a year ago. She's already mentally, she checked out a year ago. That's
right.
It. I'm going to ask you one professional wrestling question. I just want your opinion. I have my own opinion, but I want your opinion.
Sure.
Do you think Vince McMahon improved professional wrestling or destroyed it?
Man, I don't know if it's either or, because I think the territories were much better for wrestlers, because so many more wrestlers could make a living. But you have to also remember the territories were tied in when there was local television. Mm-hmm. And I think when television became a national, it took a lot away from the territories, and it kind of coincided. And he was ruthless. I mean, Vince was ruthless about how he went out and took over those territories and took their TV and everything like that. I don't know if we could have a return. I mean, the indies are really hot right now. You saw years ago, a few years back, when Cody Rhodes left WWE, he was making a good living just out on the indies. But I'm going to tell you what Kevin Sullivan told me. Kevin Sullivan told me that he feels like pro wrestling is going to go the way of roller derby. It's going to just die out. It's not going to be regularly on TV, because Vince, I don't know why Vince hadn't retired. I mean, God, at his age, he's still cranking it out. But WWE is more than likely going to be sold to a company like a Disney or a Universal. And I think it's not going to, it may just fade away,
Yeah, I think so too. My opinion is that in the short run, it improved wrestling tremendously. I think those territories would have had no choice but to go to national level television, because that would just been the way of the future. I think in the short run, Vince would have improved it tremendously. But in the long run, I think he really ruined professional wrestling. And
you know what I think ruined it? I'll tell you, I don't want to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
I think what ruined professional wrestling was it used to have the mystique. And if you come down here to Florida, Dan Sever and I talked about this on our podcast. If you wanted to get into pro wrestling, you would get your ass kicked. You would get stretched and sent home and tell everybody, and they'd pick the smallest guy to do it. I don't know how familiar you are with Danny Hodge, who was one of the greatest amateur wrestlers of all time, could rip a pair of pliers or crush an apple. They'd have a smaller guy like Danny Hodge brutalize you. They'd have guys like they did in Texas, like David Manning as the referee, who was a great amateur wrestler, come and stretch you and send you home. Hulk Hogan, Matsuda broke his leg when he tried to get into professional wrestling. I just did a commentary, my latest commentary for Hannibal. Hannibal wanted me to do a commentary on Dave Chappelle versus Seth Rollins. And like I said in that commentary, Dave Chappelle did a better job stuffing that takedown.
Yeah, he did.
And then Dave Chappelle put a beating on the guy. Seth Rollins went out on TMZ and talked about, I was so afraid. He would have been fired back in the day. I mean, I think that the mystique used to have larger than life characters.
Yeah.
I think political correctness has hurt professional wrestling tremendously.
Yes.
I mean, this angle that I just wrote came off the top of my head with calling Jenny and Jordan Santana Las Banditas, the Latin bandits, saying that they're going to steal the hearts of the fans. They're going to steal the title belts from the puntas, and they may even steal some of the husbands of those puntas, and they're going to have their creepy Uncle Pedro right there with them. And, WWE, they're so cautious. I was good friends with Gerald Briscoe. I don't say was, because he's probably still alive, but he was a great amateur wrestler, and Oklahoma State. And then he also worked in the office. He had his tag team with his brother in Florida, and he was the stooge with Pat Patterson and worked in the office. And he used to go to all the wrestling meets and recruit for WWE, and he was really interested in a couple of guys that I was coaching years ago. One Tim Dudley, TJ Dudley in particular, and I hung out and had some cocktails with Jerry down here in Florida when I sent a kid to NXT training camp, and I asked him. I said, it was so much more fun when you were doing the Attitude Era, and it was so many. He said, yeah, it's because they became a publicly traded company.
Yes.
That's what it is. That's what killed it. I had Pete Gasparino. He's actually from Connecticut. He's from Darien. Pete Gas from the Mean Street Posse on my old show, King's Court, and we were talking to Pete about that too. And he's legitimately good friends with Triple H. And he said the same thing. He said, man, yeah, it's tailored more to the kids now,
Yeah.
So I think it's that combination of things that killed it. I can't really, because the Attitude Era was during WWE. I think maybe them becoming a publicly traded company may have really killed it.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's multiple facets to it. I think the mystique that's gone 100%. I think that was the beginning of the end. Once they admitted that it was not real fighting, not real wrestling.
Work, yeah.
Yeah. Once they admitted that it was a work, being a public traded company, because then you have to appease the stockholders and not the fans. The political correctness. I think those are all. I think political correctness is the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, and I think the same kind of thing is happening with UFC. It's becoming much more niche now. There's a dynamic between both that's very similar. I worked for Bellator when they first came over to Spike TV. I was a prime marketing consultant. I was managing Stephan Bonner at the time, and I was trying to recreate the Bonner-Griffin fight. And I brought in Bonner to fight Tito Ortiz, and we had Tito in that cage, acting like a goof and doing everything we wanted him to do. I mean, we didn't even have to write the promo, and we beat him head to head. It's the only time that Bellator's ever beat UFC head to head in the ratings for a TV when Tito Ortiz fought Stephan Bonner, and that was a great fight. It was a close decision win for Tito, but back then, man, we were trying to create characters with Bellator, and UFC had the characters. But what's going on now with UFC and WWE, the dynamic is they're getting a big chunk of change for their TV deals now. So they don't really look closely at ratings and pay-per-view numbers like they used to. Neither one does. I mean, I think UFC's become a niche now too, big time.
Okay.
I can remember when every Hooters, like around UFC 100, when Brock fought Frank Mir the second time.
I remember that, yeah.
Every Hooters was jam-packed. I mean,
yeah.
I can remember and it's so similar. They follow each other because, Dana White followed Vince McMahon model. I can remember when there were all the UFC action figures out there. There really aren't anymore. There's really not the characters with UFC that there used to be either. And you know what else is really hurting UFC is the antics outside the cage of the fighters. I mean, look at Chael Sonnen, who's a bright guy. I worked with Chael Sonnen Global Force with Phil Baronia, with Jeff Jarrett. He's a bright guy, but he's smacking some lady around, he's getting busted. You got BJ Penn getting knocked out by a homeless guy outside of a strip club. You got Cain Velasquez doing drive-by shootings. You've got that guy that was chasing Colby Covington. His name escapes me. The Cuban fighter that's chasing Colby Covington down at the steakhouse and with his boys, like trying to jump him. I mean, all of these things, they make it look bad.
Yeah, it does, and it's not like the '80s where you could hide it. It's with social media, everybody knows immediately. And you're 100% right. Back in the '80s when fighters, football players, athletes in general, they can run amok and you can cover it up and nobody's got to know anything. But today, you got phones, you got you have surveillance cameras everywhere. You have the ring doorbell. Everybody knows everything immediately, and you could send it to somebody in a second and everybody knows,
I stood up for Jon Jones, have for a long time, because I said, look, the guy's not running for political office. He's fighting in a cage in his underwear.
Right.
So who really cares, all these DUI arrests and all this crap. But the public perception when they see the way that a lot of these guys are conducting themselves, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, I don't know many, and I know a lot of fighters at the end of their careers now. I don't know many that aren't suffering the effects, mentally from it. And be it, not being able to find their car, being, snapping at their wives or girlfriends, getting domestic issues. Chuck Liddell just had that domestic issue. I don't know whatever happened with that, but yeah, man, I mean, it's crazy, and I wish everybody the best, but it's definitely not like the NFL or the NHL or Major League Baseball where you have a great pension.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fighters take all the risk and they make the least amount of money. It's 100% true, especially the UFC MMA guys. It is definitely true. But
if you ever get a chance, we don't have all the time to get into it here, but if you go on Gunner's podcast and you listen to when I was talking about the Fertitta brothers and their past mob association with that family, where they got their money from, and then how the mob tactics that they brought in and how crappy fighter pay was. That wasn't that long ago. Check that episode out too.
I'm definitely gonna. What's the name of the podcast?
It's Gunner. Gunner, the gangster from Michigan, Gunner. From the Tocco family. He hosts the show with Larry, the Game Plan with Larry Mazza.
Okay.
Gunner's been on Vlad and everything. His grandfather was the boss of Detroit of the Tocco family. You should have Gunner on your show, man. He's got a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him, definitely.
I'm Gunner. I can't remember Gunner's full name, but it's Gunner's show.
All right. I'm going to make sure the Gunner Game Plan with Larry is in the description, and your match with Bonner, the intergender match, is also in the description. So it's very easy for people to just click over and check it out.
People get a kick out of that, man.
Yeah,
a lot
definitely.
of eye candy in there too.
Yeah, all right, good, nice. So what are your plans for the future now? What are you going to be doing? Are you just going to be relaxing for a little while?
Yeah, I mean, I want everybody to reach out to me because I'm a marketing consultant with Berman Law Group, working with the chiropractors and spinal surgeons, and really we are the preeminent firm nationwide because we can take cases in every state. And I want folks to reach out to me if they've been in an accident, car accident. We can do PI cases, personal injury cases in all 50 states.
Okay. How do you want them to reach out to you? I'll also put that in the description area.
My Facebook, I'm old school because my Instagram is private. It's my Facebook, my Matthew J. Granahan Facebook is the best place to go to message me on that. I'm trying to think if there's any other way to get hold of me. That's the Instagram, yeah, but Instagram, I have it private.
What about an email address?
Yeah, they can always email me, especially with PI cases. They can go to Matt G, MATTG, Fresh1, FRESH, just the number one, not ONE, just the number one at gmail.com.
I'll make sure that all of that is in the description area, and it'll be really easy for people to click over and reach out to you. Easy for them to watch that intergender match and the Gunner podcast with Larry. So they'll all be in
buy my book, Rough and Tumble. I mean, you're going to learn a lot when you read Rough and Tumble. It's I just did a 13-year retrospective on that book with Eric Paulson. It's a definitive history of wrestling, amateur wrestling, MMA, and pro wrestling, and it goes all the way back in history. It's a great book. It's called Rough and Tumble: The History of American Submission Wrestling, and you can get that. The best place to get that is ericpaulson.com, ErikPaulson.com. Rough and Tumble, and then my e-cookbook, which is Cooking with the King on Amazon Kindle. We did that back when I had my old podcast and Brian Snow was trying to cut some weight. My
And that's on Amazon.
Co-host. Okay. Yeah, it's called Cooking with the King. I just did that. And also definitely got to check me out on Hannibal TV. I've got hundreds of commentaries, matches, stand-up comedy, all kind of stuff on Hannibal TV. Hannibal TV, over 350,000 subscribers, Canada's top combat sports podcast. And after I did my episode with Jenny and Jordan Santana, the top story on Google was about Jenny Santana and Tito, because that was an estranged situation where she found out Tito was her father later in life, and they took the excerpts from our podcast on that story.
Wow.
That's running on Google right now. Yeah. So TBT podcast, check it out. You can check that out on the Hannibal TV as well. You didn't get to go on TBT podcast because we ran out of time. Now, when is your episode and Dan Severn's episode going to air on John Elite's show?
I'm not 100% sure. The day that I spoke to Michael Dowd, he said about 5 weeks. And then when I spoke to John, he said about 3 weeks. So I'm probably not going to be for another couple of weeks before it comes out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Me too. Are you kidding? But all that information, your books, Hannibal, TBT, your email, everything. And I'm going to make sure all those links are available in the description area. So it's just a click away for everybody.
Awesome. Now, are you doing anything coming up with Larry?
I am actually going to reach out to Larry soon. I'm hoping that he'll come back. But who do I have coming? I actually have Rita Gigante, the Vinny the Chin's daughter, coming on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I actually had another MMA underground street fighter that just came out today, Eric Olson. That was an interesting interview, because he does a lot of underground street fights in Europe and in the UK, and no rules, no tap outs. It's real brutal. Who else do I have? As of right now, those are the only couple of people I have on a national level. I have a couple of local people. I like get
John. You ought to get John and Mike to come on your show too.
Yeah, I kind of been trying. They've been really busy, and I possibly might.
Or what you ought to do is air your episode on your channel.
Yeah.
Get it from Evan. That episode you did aired on your channel too.
Oh, I'll reach out to Evan and see if he'll.
And for people that don't know, Evan Golden is our producer at the Berman Law Group podcast studio.
Yeah, he was a great guy, because I reached out. There were a couple of pictures that we had took that I didn't have, and I reached out, and he texted them to me right away. It really was it was a great experience, man. It was a beautiful facility too, and a really nice studio.
Yeah, it's too bad you didn't get to see our main facility around the corner, man. You got to come down and see that one. I was hoping that they'd show you the gym.
Yeah, next time I come down, because like I said, I got a friend that lives down there, and I'll definitely will hook up and we'll see that. I didn't get a chance to work out at Larry's gym either. I want to see that.
Because you know who you ought to have on?
Oh,
that's there in Jersey. You ought to get Bob Carson on, or Andrew Anderson. They're both in Jersey. Andrew Anderson was in the wrestler movie. He was in the Doritos commercial at Super Bowl. He's a longtime pro wrestler. I just did a show with him in Daytona. And then Bob Carson, Bullet Bob Carson, just fought kickboxing match last week. He's a longtime MMA fighter and journalist. He goes all the way back to the No Holds Barred days.
Wow.
Good old Bobby Carson, Bullet Bobby C. He's there in Jersey. And I'll tell you, Bob, they're both great guests, but Bob Carson is a wealth of information on fighting and MMA, and he's still competing.
Wow.
He's still
How old is he?
He's well into his 40s now. I don't know his exact age, but he's not a young man, and he just did that kickboxing match last week, and he did a pancreas fight that Dan and I were talking about, because that's a little bit different rules. He did a pancreas fight last summer, so he's still kicking a little bit. But he as far as a journalist, he and Eddie Goldman, he worked with Eddie Goldman. He was one of the original MMA journalists way before Ariel Helwani or any of these guys that they have now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out to them. I got their names, and hopefully they'll come on and we'll get some great content.
Yeah. And do you ever do anything in studio? Because Bob is right there in Jersey.
No, unfortunately, I don't have my own studio. I'd have to rent out a spot, which you can. It's relatively inexpensive now. If I really needed to, I could rent out a spot. You could rent out, hour by hour or whatnot. But that is my plan in the next, 3 to 5 years, is to have my own private studio and so on and so forth.
One other guy in Jersey, I forgot to mention that was on our show, on our podcast. He's an Albanian fighter, BJJ black belt. His name is George Murkai. He's an interesting guy, Albanian. He's tied into the Albanians up there. I'll leave it at that.
George Murkai. Okay.
He runs a strip club up there, and he's a character. He's an interesting guy.
Okay.
In Jersey, and Johnny A knows him. He's a Albanian fighter, younger Albanian fighter. I think he's in his late 20s.
Okay.
And he's right there in Jersey, and he's in South Jersey too.
All right, cool. We'll talk more, off the air, but because we'll definitely see if I can get some of these guys on and create some really great content. And Matt, I have to really thank you for everything you've done. You've been
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I'll take a swig. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, no problem, man. Yeah,
Love
that's
it.
right. And Matt, do me a favor. Tell everybody out there who's watching or listening to subscribe and like to Serious and Silliness for the best content on YouTube.
Let me tell you guys, serious. You got serious over here. You got silliness over here. You have serious over here and silliness over here. Subscribe to the show. This is one of the best podcasts out there. MMA guys, mob guys, arm wrestlers, entertainers, strippers, porn stars, you name it.
That's right.
Serious and silliness.
That's right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate everything, man. We'll talk soon.
Cool. Sounds good. Have a great afternoon.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.